So we do have currently the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 and the Indian Wireless Telegraph Act 1933, and then the Telegraph Wires Unlawful Possession Act 1950. So we have these archaic laws, very old laws from, let's say, pre-independence era, some of them, and some like post-independence, which now the Telecom Bill, the Indian Telecommunication Bill 2022, seeks to replace and come out with a new telecom law in its entirety. Right now, the telecom, the scope of this law is quite broad. It's broader than what we have in place right now in the telecom space in India. Now, just one sec. So it broadly seeks to regulate telecom networks and telecom services, who are providing these services to consumers. Interestingly, when they talk about telecom services and telecom networks, and they're not talking about only about your, let's say, your Vodafones and Airtels and these traditional networks we talked about. These also talk about OTT telecom services, like, let's say, WhatsApp calls or things like that. Any telecommunication that happens through OTT platforms are also going to be expected to be a part of this law, which is of course a very significant development, because it brings into the conversation of whether OTT platforms are the same as telecom companies. Some people say the functions are similar, the characteristics are similar, but the technology is different. So there's a whole debate around that. It also talks about how the spectrum for these telecommunication services will be allocated. So there's an auction process. So it will talk about the auction process, the administrative process for those allocations, and other mechanisms. And very, very importantly, which is of course where I feel that everyone should have say, including everyone in the room, are the provisions which talk about that the central government has powers to intercept, monitor, and block messages between two or more persons. Now, of course, it's not a very straightforward imposition that the government can, monitor everything and intercept everything. However, there are certain conditions to it, attached to it, and there's more nuance to it. But broadly, what it says that is the government can do it if this action can be taken, if it is necessary for a public emergency, threat to public safety, security of the state, public order, prevention of an offense. And then on these grounds, some messages can be intercepted. Now, these are some of the terms used in this provision are quite wide and quite vague, and there are conversations that it may impose a threat to privacy of people in India. And on the other hand, there are concerns that, privacy is of course important, but at the same time, the government does need some sort of powers and some sort of administrative control on to ensure national security and to ensure public peace, etc. So there's that debate going on that, where is the line? How do you balance the right of privacy of people while the government's right to also ensure public safety and national security interests? So that's a very important debate happening in this. Because the reason, because the genesis of this debate is also coming from the fact that the Supreme Court, when it declared the right to privacy a fundamental right, it introduced a set of safeguards, procedural safeguards that have to be taken if this right has to be, tampered with, just to be diluted in any sense of the word. There are certain set of safeguards, procedural safeguards, and the bill does not incorporate these safeguards that the Supreme Court has mentioned for right to privacy. So that's a very important debate, that to what extent should the government be allowed to intercept messages, etc. Now, the conversation on the timelines for this is that there are reports that this bill may be introduced in the monsoon session of Parliament later this year, which is not too far away, because they say that a revised draft basis the public consultations that happened is now ready, and interministerial conversations have happened on this bill. So now it's the right time for the bill to be tabled in the Parliament. However, there is enough time. So if there are any reservations that people have about how this law operates, they should feel free to write to the government and just talk about it in the public domain, maybe write articles, etc., and see how the law can take shape in a manner that, of course, safeguards the interests that the telecom legislation needs to look at, from everyone, how like quality control and spectrum control and price control and protect rights of consumers, which is the eventual point, but also make sure that the privacy rights of people are not affected. So that's broadly which we are going to see in the technology policy space this year. Yeah, so if there are any questions.